Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com. So I thought I would do a little video today about real estate, since I haven't done a real estate video in quite some time, at least that I can remember. But I get this question a lot. If you want to check out, or I get questions on real estate a lot, if you want to check out some of my real estate videos, you can check out the playlist here. And I just thought I would do this because I was filling out a personal financial statement and rent rolls and all this stuff for a bank, because I am going to be upgrading to the next level. So probably within the next year or so. Right now I currently have about 26 rental units, and I am going to be rolling some of that in, or using some of that as assets, those assets as collateral, to buy something big. We're talking probably in the $5 to $10 million range, looking for probably an apartment building or something of that size. So I'll be talking about that probably when I get into that process, kind of letting you guys know how that works. But at the smaller scale here, I've got a question on real estate vacation rentals. So this message is from Aaron, and he says, "Hi John, my name is Aaron, and I recently discovered your site this Christmas when my wife gave me your book Soft Skills as a present." Aw, what a nice wife. If you want to give someone soft skills, you can get it right here. Anyway, thanks Aaron. And thanks Aaron's wife for getting him the book. My wife and I have been thinking about ways to better our lives and financial situation for a few years now, so your book and website really resounded with me. So that's cool. All right, we have been dabbling in the idea of real estate investing for a while, and have even gone so far as to purchase a second home in a resort community that can double as our vacation home and a seasonal short-term rental property. Our second home is in a ski, winter, and lake summer tourism community. Okay, that's cool. Maybe Lake Tahoe? I don't know. While I have the feeling that I feel that having a rental property in a tourism-based community is a valuable thing, it can be difficult to maintain the property or feel like someone else is properly maintaining or managing it for you. I would imagine so. We are at the point of considering purchasing another property, and I was curious as to what are your thoughts on the topic of resort community rental properties versus traditional suburb rental properties. Additionally, do you have any advice on the topic of remote property management in the situation where you do not live in the same area as that property, or do you avoid that situation altogether? Can't wait to hear your thoughts on this and many others, but all in due time. Thank you for your time. Best regards, Aaron. And so Aaron, unfortunately, a lot of times my video responses come out a lot later than I get the email. So, this unfortunately, this probably won't be timely for you, but hopefully it'll be timely for someone else here. So let me get through a couple of questions here. So first of all, what do I think about remote property management? Let me talk about that. So all of my properties are remotely property managed. I live in San Diego currently, Pacific Beach, and my properties are in Boise, Idaho, and Kansas City, Missouri right now. So everything is remotely managed. I've got basically 3 property management companies between all my units that manage all those properties, and that goes pretty smooth, right? Once you've got that established. I don't know if I've done a video on property managers yet. If not, I will be doing one talking about how to hire a property manager, what to look for in a property management company, because that's critical advice. You can probably find some of that in my videos on real estate investment. So I think it's totally doable, totally possible, and you definitely want property management, right? You don't want to try to remote manage property yourself. That would be I've done that a little bit. That's just, don't do that. If you like pain and I should tell a story sometime about what happened. In fact, if you guys are interested, let me know, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and I'll tell you my story about, if there's enough interest, about how I was remotely managing my property when I only had one property, and someone gutted the entire property and left me high and dry with a property that I couldn't rent, and that was gutted. So anyway, I do think that it's viable. I think if you're doing your first property, you should probably be nearby. I've bought properties sight unseen out of state and didn't even fly in to go see them. But that was like my maybe 10th property that I bought when I started doing that. So that's definitely an option. And I definitely wouldn't limit yourself just to your geographic area, because there might be better investments in different areas. But let's get to the meat of the question here, which is basically, what do I think about vacation rentals versus long-term versus suburban type of rentals, long-term rentals, right? So I don't particularly like vacation rentals, and I'll tell you why. The biggest thing is because of the big turnover. So there's a lot more pieces, right? I want my real estate to be as passive as possible. So that's why, so I would really prefer tenants to stay forever. I want to get a bunch of grandmas in my unit that would just have, maybe a cat or so, and they just live there for 20 years or so before they kick the bucket or go to a nursing home. That's honestly, that's the best thing, right? You want to have stability, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to, it's just the rent comes in, everything's great. Long-term rental properties allow you that. Now, you can potentially make more money when in a vacation rental, especially if it's a popular area. Like, let's take San Diego, Pacific Beach here. I'm not going to invest here because typically what ends up happening is that the prices are really high, first of all, of the property. So the rent ratio to property price isn't usually good, even though some weeks out of the year you can rent them at super high rates. Now, if you've got if you're like Lake Tahoe, let's say, ski in the winter, and in the summer you've got the lake and all that, and you've got two high seasons, probably you have better but I think the price, I don't know, I mean, you could end up, if the prices work, but what's going to end up happening though is, in order to pay for those higher prices, you're going to have that headache. It's basically more like running a business, right? When I put in a tenant into my property, or when my property management company does, right, it can be fairly passive for me, because they're finding the tenant, they get the tenant, they put the tenant in, and then there's some maintenance perhaps every once in a while, but for the most part, the tenant's just doing their thing, and they're hopefully living there for 6 months, hopefully a year at least, minimum lease, right? And we don't have all this turnover. But when you have a vacation rental, remember what's going to happen is, it looks good on paper when you're like, oh, I can get $3,000 a week. Yeah, that's great, but you got to advertise that. People are only staying for a week. People are canceling reservations. People are staying for 3 days. They're having a wild ass party, and they're wrecking your shit. And now you got to get the maids in there and clean towels, and what the heck is that fluid on the floor, right? There's all kinds of stuff that you're going to have to deal with in that kind of situation. Plus, people are going to be calling up and asking, where should I go to eat, and having all kinds of issues, because it's all, big turnover. Plus, you're going to have people that might scam you, right? There's a lot more headache. So I wouldn't manage it myself. I'll just tell you that right out. I think there's better businesses that you could do than that. So I wouldn't do it myself unless I was already in the business. But you can pay a property manager. Now, take this with a grain of salt, because I do not have any vacation rentals, but I have looked into vacation rentals. I do have 26 regular rental units, 2 of them being commercial office spaces, so I do have some experience in that area, and the rest being residential. But I've looked into it, and essentially you could get a property management company that will manage the vacation rental, a vacation management company, and they will charge something around 30%. I think that's probably about the going rate. Whereas a traditional property management company managing a long-term rental is probably going to charge about 10%. That's pretty much the going rate. There's obviously differences there, but that's in general. So you're paying more, obviously, right? But in order to not deal with the headaches. And if they're a really good vacation rental management property, perhaps you wouldn't even know what's going on, and you would just get the check. But I'm guessing you're going to get a lot of emails and a lot of problems, because you're going to have to make some decisions, right? Even with my properties, the property management companies don't bug me much, right? A lot of times everything is smooth. Every once in a while I get a little invoice that says, some idiot doesn't know how to turn off the water in the toilet when it overflows, and they shoved a bunch of tampons down there, and I had to send a plumber out over the weekend. So I curse that, and then I say, okay, right? So that doesn't happen too often, but I imagine with a vacation rental, there's going to be a whole lot of more shit that you're going to have to deal with. So anyway, that's kind of my take on it. To summarize, I would prefer doing the long-term rentals. I can't imagine, if you had let's say you had 10 vacation rentals, whew, that'd be a lot of headache. I would want to have like a layer in between. I'd want to be making enough money where I could hire someone that like oversaw the management companies, or have a really, really good manager that you're like, you give the instructions and you're like, you deal with the problem, anything up to, you know, $4,000, you make the judgment call, just send me a check. I don't want to know what's going on. To some degree, right? I mean, you should obviously get reports and know what's going on, but you don't want to be constantly interrupted making decisions, right? You want to hear at the end of the month what happened so that you can adjust and course correct. So yeah, that's what I think. I mean, you know, one other side of it, pros and cons, is a long-term rental is probably not going to be in a spiky area of, you know, a crash and a bubble type of real estate, right? Any kind of the vacation rental areas are typically bubble areas. So if you catch it right and you get it on the downtrend, you could probably get a good value. But here's one other thing. I'll just leave you with one other point here, which kind of goes against or talks about this bubble thing, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, okay, I'm going to buy in California or Florida or Vegas, or, you know, one of those bubble type of roller coaster real estate areas, and they're going to buy low. And that's great. You buy low, you buy vacation rental there, and you're like, oh, I'm really raking in the money. I did good because I bought this for a low price. But what people forget is the cap rate, the current cap rate of the property. So without getting into too many technical details, essentially it means this, right? If you buy a property at a really good deal, a vacation rental, typically when you pick one up, is going to be at a good deal. Well, when the value goes up, right, and you're like, well, I got in it for this much, so my mortgage is low, so I'm cash flowing like a king. Well, your cap rate is actually low because the cap rate is calculated off of the actual value of the property, right? So, I mean, there's different ways to calculate it, but essentially, if the property is worth more money, if you follow me here, then you're getting less return on your investment. So let's say you bought a property for $500,000 and it went up to $1 million, but the rent was pretty much the same, right? Then your cap rate just got cut in half because now it sucks. Because now, you know, let's say that you're making, I don't even know what number, let's say $3,000 a week on your $500,000 investment. That sounds good, right? But now it's worth $1 million. You've got $1 million essentially of asset tied up. You'd be better off selling that property, taking the $500,000 profit that you got and putting it somewhere else where the cap rate's higher, where you're going to be able to get maybe multiple properties. They're going to have a higher total overall rent, you know, based on or operating capital, you know, net after everything, because remember, vacation properties are going to have more expenses. So anyway, I think I've probably talked about this topic enough. The bottom line is there's trade-offs here. I personally would not do vacation rentals. Maybe if you got one of them and you're going to use it yourself, that's cool. But your next property, I would not do a vacation rental unless this is working out perfectly fine for you. But I can't imagine this scaling up very well. I just talked about where I'm going with real estate, right? I'm going to buy, I guess you could buy a hotel, right? Maybe you could do that, but I'm going to go for apartment complexes, and I think that's going to be a better route. There's going to be a lot less headache. But anyway, good question. And, you know, I wish you all good job taking steps, right? I mean, so many people talk about real estate investment and say this would be a good idea, but they don't do it. The thing is, and I'll give you, for those of you that are sitting on the fence here, I'll give you some encouragement here, which is basically this. Unless you really screw up, almost all real estate decisions you make, like deals, like taking some kind of action, is going to be a good decision in 30 years. So if you're thinking long term, most of the time it's going to be a good decision in 10 or 20. So if you're like, oh, I don't know, I can't get quite a good enough deal, or I'm unsure. If you're looking big picture enough, if you're looking down the road long enough, you're not going to regret the decision in 20 or 30 years, right? Almost in 5 years you could, in 1 year you could, right? You could be losing your ass in 1 year or 5 years, but in 10, almost everything kind of evens out because of the benefits, right, of having any kind of real estate investment. In 20, it's really good. In 30, I can't imagine bad deals that you know 30 years down the road. I'm sure there are some of them, but for the most part, that's not going to exist. All right, I've covered like 15 topics here, so I'm just going to cut the video here. Hopefully you found this useful. If you want to get more real estate videos, obviously let me know. And if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.